Social media. Probably the 3 or 4 most popular types of social media are a general website, and then these are the 3 most popular I think right now: YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. Maybe about 6 or 7 years ago, MySpace used to be something that a lot of people used too. Now they've kind of gone into a video type of musical scene, so there's still a lot of people using it, but just mainly those people that are in the musical video type scene use those. Nonetheless, social media is here to stay, so what can we do about it? As most of you are probably watching this on YouTube, social media is a great way to get your point across to several thousands of people, if not millions, based on the whole 6 degrees of separation, where I can show the video to you and perhaps you can show it to somebody else, and it's an endless kind of loop of familiarity with what's going on. What is the importance of social media, and why am I trying to talk about this and discuss this today? I think social media is important because there should be rules to social media, just like everything else. I worked at the United States Olympic Education Center for 8 years. And in that time span, we had all kinds of seminars dealing with media relations and how we should be presenting ourselves in the public, this, that, and the other. Well, guess what? Social media kind of blew that whole thing open wide. Why, you ask? Because people would put, let's just say, pictures that they wouldn't necessarily show to their grandmother on there, or language that they would not show or say to their grandparents and or their mom or dad on there. And what happens? And this is what some of the athletes would say: well, I have a certain select few friends that only can see those messages and images, blah, 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 blah. Going back to the whole 6 degrees of separation, where one person can pass on to the next person, can pass on to the next person, can pass on to the next person. Even if you delete a message and or an image, it's still visible. I'll give you a concrete example of that. I think in my 2nd or 3rd year of coaching at the United States Olympic Education Center, I was brought into the director's office and he showed me pictures of said athletes at a party. And the pictures were very revealing, so to speak. So after that happened, I had a talk with my team and I sort of suggested to them, you know, I'm fine with if you guys want to use MySpace and Facebook. At that time, Twitter wasn't as popular. But you have to understand that there are rules and regulations to how you should be portraying yourself image-wise, so that everybody else can see. On the positive side of social media, you have so much breadth and width now that you maybe didn't have before. In other words, if I'm an aspiring Olympian and I'm trying to fundraise and I'm trying to let everybody know I made the Olympic team, what a great avenue to put your message out there and let everybody know, hey, I finally made the Olympic team. I've been training for 10, 12 years. What I'm doing right now is X, Y, and Z. You can also create blogs. You can also create videos. You can also have pictures. You can travel overseas, and in an instant, people can see what you're doing. So there are pros and cons to social media, and I guess I just want to point out that everyone needs to be really careful what kind of information they're putting on social media, because not only is it something that can help you fundraise, but it also is something that can help get you a job. And then, of course, the opposite of that is also true as well. It's a scenario where the information that you're putting out there to the public, you want to be very certain that it is your best side, it is your best reflection, it is the best image that you can portray, because what happens is employers, future employers, I think sometimes younger people, it's very difficult for them to see 4 or 5 or 6 or 7 years in advance. But what happens if you have a revealing sort of picture, or some negative connotating type of words on YouTube or Facebook or Twitter or MySpace, or there are several other types of social media out there, but I'm talking specifically about the big 3 or 4, but there's other ones too. So if you're not using one of those big 3 or 4, realize that there are other types of social media that you can use. Anyway, getting back to the point, if you put information on there that is not necessarily in a positive reflection of yourself and or your peers, and or you're saying something negative about somebody, realize that could come back later on in your life, and your employer may say, what did you mean when you said this? So essentially you're doing an interview every time you're online. So I want you to kind of understand and just be thinking about it a little bit. Getting back to how this can become a resource for greatness. How it can become a resource for greatness is some of the things that I mentioned before. If you are trying to, let's say you're trying to write a book or something like that, maybe you're an aspiring writer, and you can put a lot of information online connected to, let's say, Facebook and MySpace and Twitter and YouTube, and then you've got your own website. So now you've got your own website, but how many people are actually going to come to your website? It may be 6 or 7. But if you've got 1,400 friends on Facebook, and you got another 300 friends on MySpace, and you got another 200 friends on Twitter, can you see how the ripple effect could, perhaps help that person right now? Granted, if this person is a good writer and she's got skills, now if she puts an article out there and she uses all of those different type of social media plus her own website, she has a much broader base of communication that maybe she didn't otherwise have. She could do the same thing with YouTube, like I'm doing with you right now. For instance, let's say this person writes poems and she is adept at writing poems. Maybe she gets online and she reads the poem right into a camera like I'm doing to you. Now, of course, she can use those same social media again. You'd be surprised how many people are out there actually viewing, the viewing public as it's called. You'd be surprised how many people are out there viewing. I heard something like there's 8 million people on Facebook. I don't know how many people are watching YouTube. These things are global though, so that's the beauty of them. And on the flip side, you just need to remember that what we portray on the social media can enhance our ability to perform at a high level, meaning if I'm a writer, if I'm a wrestler or whatnot, and it can also detract if the wrong image is put out there. So you want to make sure everything that you're putting out there is positive, and you want to make sure you're using the tools that are available. They're free for the most part. Now, website, if you buy a website, it's going to cost you a domain name, and you're going to have to, spend a little bit of hard-earned money on that. But the social media that the ones that we're talking about right now, beyond the website, YouTube, Facebook, MySpace, Twitter, those are all free. So with freedom comes a huge responsibility, and if you kind of can use that term, that phrase with the social media, you'll have an opportunity to put yourself in a good light. Now, if you're an aspiring anything, sponsors are going to be out there, supporters are going to be out there, everything under the sun is going to be out there. On the other side of it, I didn't talk about this at all, you want to be very careful who your friends are on Facebook. Who knows who's out there in cyberspace? I would suggest that if you have friends, they are distant friends on Facebook, and if you want to have a friendly contact with certain type of people, maybe you create a double website or a double social media. So on the one end, you've got a kind of a marketing sort of social media, and then for your close contact, I would suggest just picking up the phone and calling people, or maybe texting them, or you've got a double type of Facebook where you actually have 2 different names, where the one that you're using with close contact with your friends and family, that is somewhat, maybe you've only got 50 people on that one. But the one where you're actually maybe trying to go out there and get fundraisers and let people know what you're doing when you travel overseas and do all these other amazing different things, that would be something where maybe you would have up to 1,400 friends, because it is a little bit tricky because you never know who your friend is. So I hope that sheds some light on ways in which you can use social media to your benefit, and some of the things that can safeguard you from future things that may happen to you, i.e., trying to get a job with your employers and whatnot. Something to think about for certain. Social media. Remember, you can find out more information like this at youtube.com, Coach Shannon, Coach Shannon Talks.